Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Steven. It's M Target. And we're here to talk about the last 10 days or so of Dota 2. And it's been a messy one. It's been a messy stretch.
It's
a lot of stuff's happened.
And most of it outside of Dota.
Some stuff did happen inside of Dota. We're going to be talking
a little bit in game, not a whole lot.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Chongqing Major qualifiers. They wrapped up yesterday, and going to go over who's in, who's out, and what the next step is for all of them. Going to be talking about the latest controversy regarding Skemberlu, former Complexity Gaming player and current TNC player, Kuku, who kind of have a sort of thing going on right now with the Chinese government, maybe, or maybe not, but probably. Going to talk about them. And we're going to wrap up by talking about Pain X and the recent issues they've been having with Valve and how they kind of really fudged that entire situation. So Chongqing Majors, again, wrapped up yesterday. Just going to quickly go over the results. And not really too many huge surprises in terms of who qualified and who didn't. In Europe, we had Team Secret, Team Liquid, and Alliance qualifying. In CIS, we had No Pango and Virtus Pro. Virtus Pro actually came in second. No Pango came in first. But again, those are probably the two teams you expect to win. China had Team Aster, Vici Gaming, PSG LGD. Southeast Asia, Fnatic, TNC Predator. South America had Pain Gaming and Thunder Predator with a little bit of an asterisk next to Thunder Predator, which we'll get to later. And North America finally had J-Storm, Forward Gaming, and Evil Geniuses. There will be one more team, which will be admitted to the Chongqing Major, and that will be the winner of the Bucharest Minor. The Bucharest Minor is going to have its qualifiers start tomorrow, Monday, December 3rd, and it will start on January 9th. So, after Christmas, everybody. So, that aside, who impressed you? Who didn't? What are your thoughts on the qualifiers?
Liquid impressed me. Mostly because of their really clean run in qualifiers for not so much the run. Like, okay, cool. They went 4-0, and then they went 2-0 against Alliance, and then they went 1-2 against Secret, and then they 2-1 to Alliance. Like, that's good. But what's better is the fact that they were like, let's do this. And they decided to mess around and get Kuroki his lifetime achievement medal, so to speak. For those who don't know, Kuroki has been, he's been around for a long time, and he's played a bunch of different positions, which means that he has played or had played damn near every hero in Dota. He's one of the very few who had been over 100 heroes, and over the 100 hero mark. Then he was over the 105. He was inching there, and he was like 6 heroes away, I want to say, from hitting the every single hero on the Dota 2 roster in a competitive match. And so they did it. They just said, screw it, we're going to put him on XYZ. And short of, the game where he played Broodmother, and that was just embarrassing as hell, he actually did really well. So don't. I looked at the Dota, but I didn't watch that one. I was at work that day, so I had to follow along with like Join Dota and Twitter tweets. Or Track Dota, excuse me, not Join Dota. And that, I looked at the results of that one, and I was like, dude, don't play Brood. Yeah. Play Chen all you want. Don't play Brood.
Yeah. But yeah, Kuroki now has played a pro game as every single Dota 2 hero, and that's a testament to his longevity, versatility, and most importantly, because that's a great achievement for him, but most importantly, Team Liquid looks pretty darn good while still kind of messing around a little bit. They actually, for those who don't remember, washed out of the qualifiers for the Kuala Lumpur Major, and then ended up pulling out of the Dream League Minor, and kind of sort of that strangeness to the start of the season. They really needed to look strong in these qualifiers in order to maintain their elite status going into the rest of the season. And they had a good enough performance that I'd say, yeah, they're still around. They're still very good.
Yeah, they got this.
Yeah.
Like I said, when their losses to Secret included Kuroki mid Brood Mama, yeah, that's really all I needed.
Yeah, but also staying in Europe, team that probably looked the worst overall in terms of where they should have been versus where they were, Ninjas in Pajamas. They ended up washing out of the groups, and on paper, their group is okay. They had Team Liquid, Final Tribe, and Vega Squadron. They lost 0-2, but they didn't play Liquid. They went 1-2 against the Final Tribe, and then they went 1-2 against Vega Squadron, and that's not good. Ninjas in Pajamas are supposed to be a top tier team, maybe at least a very good team, and to wash out against basically regional level competition in Final Tribe and Vega, it's not good. I mean, how do you read into that? Like,
no, I 100% agree. Sorry, I'm hearing strange noises.
Should note that they were coming out. They had a very strong showing at the Kuala Lumpur Major. Ended up taking, I believe, 4th place. But that comes with the asterisk of they were down 33 and up mind control. For those who don't remember, 33 ended up having a visa issue because he's Israeli and Malaysia doesn't like to admit Israelis into their country. Mind control ended up subbing in and going ham.
As you said, we talked about this in the last episode, that there was definitely a little bit of mind control beast moding.
Yeah. They ended up taking 4th place. And that's a pretty good mark, but for them, this was their full strength team, and they washed out and didn't look very good in the process. Same goes for OG, by the way. OG actually returned to action. Their performance, they didn't look great. They ended up losing 1-2, washing out of their group. Got 2-0'd by Alliance, and then got 2-1'd by Alliance. Which, there's Alliance is good right now. That was unfortunate, but I will note that they were also playing with a very new roster. They ended up recently losing their carry player, Anna. They just recently added Pycat, so willing to give them a little bit of a mulligan, in my opinion.
Oh no, I'm always for mulligans for new squads, just like that.
But Ninjas in Pajamas definitely underperformed relative to where they were.
No, and I agree. And it's funny because we didn't talk about this beforehand. It wasn't something we were going to talk about. But how do you feel about the fact that they lost to Alliance twice?
I think that's more. Yeah, I think that's more indicative of Alliance being maybe better than we're giving them credit for, because we haven't really discussed them very much. They've looked pretty darn good on the whole. I'm not necessarily willing to buy into them as a top end team yet, but Alliance is definitely a lot better than they have been basically since like TI4.
No, I totally agree. And I guess I'll word it this way. Because people were tweeting about, OG only got knocked out because they lost to Alliance twice, and it's clearly just the Alliance playstyle that they lost to, and they totally look fine beyond that. Like, to me, what I'm hearing is 99% bullshit of my favorite team won TI, and I was super happy, and then they came back and didn't look as good, but I hate to admit that they got worse. It's basically what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing, or do you think there's a little bit of legitimacy to the whole when we lost to Alliance twice?
I mean, I'm going to note that there's a proud tradition of TI TI grand finalists, let's say. Not necessarily TI winners, but TI grand finalists who look really phenomenal at the tournament and then fall off pretty hard.
And even more so in the case where you lose a player, take a whole major cycle off.
Yeah. I mean, and also let's not forget Seven King Mad, whatever we're calling him, however we're pronouncing that. He was their coach at the start of last season. And there was probably a reason for that.
Yep.
Not to say that they lost because of him, because again, they were playing with a fresh squad and he was good enough to help them win the international. But they're still kind of a patchwork team.
I'm just going to say that there's a reason his name is Mad. Like, not even joking. Like, his...
Are you saying he tilts?
I'm trying to decide whether or not if I want to actually out what his name stands for, because like I feel like it's one of those like open secrets where everybody knows it but nobody talks about it. But I also don't. Okay, so he used to swear, and he used to swear a lot in pubs, and he stopped saying fucking and started typing 7CKing. So whenever you 7CKing 88 blah 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 blah, he's literally saying you fucking. So his name is fucking Mad.
Nice.
So take that as you will.
Yeah. Either way, to get back on track.
Again, he's a great force as a coach.
Yeah,
great player, and maybe he doesn't tilt. I don't know, but there is something to say about the fact that his name is literally anger.
Yeah. Regardless, I'm expecting good things from OG on the whole. They're probably not going to win TI again. I wouldn't even necessarily say they're going to make it to every major. But I'm also not willing to write them off yet. We'll see how they go.
I totally agree.
Yeah, we'll see how they do. I'm not going to hold this loss against them, though.
Early prediction, they're going to make it to TI, and they're going to get somewhere between 5th and 12th.
Yeah, so I'd agree with that. And random other notes, J Storm actually looked pretty darn good in the North American qualifiers. They took first place over...
So damn good.
Yeah, over Forward Gaming and Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses actually came in third. J Storm ended up 2-1ing their way through the groups, bested Team, and then Team again. They dropped a 2-1 series to Forward Gaming in the group, but then in the playoffs, they got their revenge by 2-0ing Evil Geniuses and 2-1ing Forward Gaming to take the top spot. And yeah, strong performance from a team that really couldn't really peg how well they were going to be or how well they were going to do at the start of the season. I mean, when they were still March out of Army, they looked okay, but here they actually looked good. And yeah, that's something to look forward to from them, I'd say. Also of note, Plus Ultra, the team we mentioned last time that has Eternal Envy, Snaking, and Fear, also looked pretty darn good. They ended up taking the second place spot in their group, beat Complexity Gaming as well as Team Borster, but more so of note is Complexity Gaming because that's a team that actually has a full lineup of pro talent. They ended up washing out of the group stage, or washing out of the playoffs, excuse me. They got 2-0'd by Forward Gaming and 2-0'd by Evil Geniuses. So not a great performance in the playoffs, but a team with enough name value that I'm a little bit interested going forward, depending on how they do. And yeah, Team Aster, I felt looked pretty darn good in the Chinese qualifiers. Going to see how they do at the actual tournament. They looked similarly good in the qualifiers to the Kuala Lumpur Major, but then got bodied at the tournament. So it comes with a little bit of skepticism, but there's enough there to be excited about, in my opinion, that so you're going to be taking a close look at Aster.
Literally just took all of what I was going to say there, because I was just going to put the whole up. Attention, everyone. Remember that this was exactly the same thing he said before they got bodied at the Kuala Lumpur Major.
Yeah.
Because, like, hello.
Yeah, so, I owned up to that. Yeah, I'll own up again.
They look good. I bought into it then, too. But I'm afraid that they're going to be one of those Chinese teams that plays China perfectly to a T, but then has a problem on the international stage. Give them time. The players, I'm sure, will continue to be great. But until then,
yeah, we will see how they pan out here. And again, the last spot will go to the Bucharest Minor winner. Pretty much all the usual suspects, all the good teams that didn't quite qualify for the tournament outright are going to be competing in the qualifiers. You got your Ninjas in Pajamas, your OGs, your Complexities, etc., etc. That should be a fun watch. I actually really quite enjoyed the DreamHack Minor. So I'm expecting the Bucharest Minor to be similarly enjoyable. And again, qualifiers for that start on Monday, December 3rd. So mark your calendars for that tomorrow. So going on to the next subject, we've touched upon the results for the Chongqing Major's South American qualifiers, with Pain Gaming winning. Thunder Predator getting that spot, but the actual winner being the former Pain X team, now going by the name Test 123. You may or may not remember them as the team that includes CCNC, as well as Ritsu and Kitrak. The actual South American on the team is Leposa, a former SG Esports player. 4 Americans, 1 Brazilian. There was a controversy earlier this week when the Pain X team, according to Valve, they're still Pain X, got disqualified from the qualifier that they had already won. They were bumped from the tournament through a statement from Valve on the official Dota 2 blog. They were replaced with Thunder Predator, and they will not be playing at the Chongqing Major at this time.
Also, to note,
Valve's explanation essentially was that they were not really a South American team and therefore were disqualified from a South American qualifier that, again, they had already won. So there's been a mix of responses, both from the players and from other pros. This was spurred on by a Twitter post by PPD of Ninjas Pajamas / formerly of Optic Gaming and Evil Geniuses. And yeah, it's just a generally bad look on the whole. So what's your take? Go.
Okay, so in the statement from Valve, they state they had discussed this with Pain X previously. So they were aware of the situation beforehand. Asterisk. Big ass asterisk. They said that they told Pain X, you cannot fly back and forth. You need to just basically go down there and live there for a couple months, compete, whatever, be a part of South America.
Valve was alleging, basically, that they were just kind of living in America, showing up in Brazil for these...
PPD alleged that first. Yeah. Not so much Valve.
And then Valve co-signed. But the allegation is that the Pain X team was flying down to South America for South American qualifiers, then coming back to the States, and then going back down for the next qualifiers, and then coming back to the States. And that, therefore, they weren't really an authentic South American team. And they were kind of more or less implied to be gaming the system in that way. So, go ahead.
Anyways, continuing. The argument to be made here in Valve's defense, and I'm pro Valve here mostly. One, Valve should have maybe been on top of this a little bit sooner, but if nobody knew, then or had any idea, then well, that's a problem. And of course, if their scrim partners were keeping their mouths shut, then how are you going to know? But I think Valve did the right thing. You know, Valve said, look, we operated in good faith and said, if you want to go there, or if you want to compete here, this is what you got to do. Don't pull any stunts, just do it, do it right. And then when it was shown that they didn't, Valve acted quickly and said, we don't care that you guys just won. Get the hell out.
And go ahead. I'll let you finish.
I was going to say, and I agree with that. I do think that it stinks. Yeah, sure that it was after the fact, but I mean, God, if they had said, well, they competed illegally, but we're going to let them go anyways, that would just completely undermine everything that Valve has slowly been working towards.
Yeah, I am going to disagree, and that's probably not too surprising given the fact that I'm always on the what the fuck Valve side. What the fuck, Valve? Like, what's up, guys? How did you not catch this earlier? This ultimately makes Dota once again look super duper bush league. It makes it look like this game is being run by, well, nobody basically. It makes it look like they're just kind of making things up as they go along, probably because they are. This is really tough to defend on any level in my mind. over the course of Dota 2's history, we have seen teams do a lot of different things where, yeah, they probably shouldn't be playing in this region for a qualifier. We saw it plenty of times. I believe it was Kaipi back in the day, the team that had Sing Sing, bouncing back and forth between CIS and EU and maybe even North American qualifiers.
Kaipi did it.
Yeah, the teams have done that. Last season, as recently as last season, which was the Dota Pro Circuit, we had the all-Korean Immortals team competing in North America.
To be fair, they moved here.
But
But the thing is, that's exactly what Valve said you have to do. Move to the country or region, go for it.
But to continue on, they weren't on top of this. There's no real precedent for it. And I get the idea of there being a crackdown, and I can see them doing this if Pain X did explicitly lie to them. Otherwise, this just feels like Valve kind of maybe trying. If I'm being generous, they're hand-holding the South American region. If I'm not being so generous, it basically feels like they're unintentionally undermining the ability of the region to grow by preventing teams from, one, fielding competitive rosters with foreign players, and two, not allowing their teams in South America to regularly compete in non-Dota Pro Circuit tournaments. Because keep in mind, one of the things that CCNC specifically discussed was traveling back and forth for ESL 1 qualifiers. ESL 1, not part of the Dota Pro Circuit. They don't have South American qualifiers. They have America's qualifiers, like it was back in the day. And if you're playing on South American servers in a tournament against people from North America, that's very bad for you because their servers aren't as good. If you are a South American team and you have the option to play on North American servers in North America, you're going to take that opportunity. And denying teams the ability to make more money by doing that kind of stuff is not good for anybody.
If I may.
Go ahead. Yeah, of course you may.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sort of to counter your counter here. The whole, okay, they went to America to compete for Hamburg. Great. You know, I don't think that's the problem, because if you're Americans who moved to Brazil long-term, air quotes, to become a South American squad, and then you go, okay, it makes sense for us to compete for Hamburg in North America. Let's go back to North America and compete in North America as a South American squad. And then go back to South America for preparation for DPC. That's one thing. But it's a completely different thing to be a group of North Americans living in North America, playing in North America, representing South America for Hamburg, which is what I'm feeling like Valve and PPD are alleging happened, is that it was more of a, they didn't come back to compete for Hamburg or to qualify for Hamburg. They came back and stayed. And then we're like, oh shit, we got to get back down there for qualifiers, and flew back down to Brazil.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, even if they do this, it's still such a gameable system. Another great example was Wind and Rain. If you remember them, they played in the qualifiers for Europe in TI8. They had I believe 4 North American players, but they were formed very quickly. They played just for that one tournament, and then they just kind of disappeared and all got broken up. 3 of them went to March Out of Army. 1 of them went to Pain X. I'm not going to say that they were necessarily gaming the system, because that's ultimately what they're alleged to be doing. They're alleged to basically be a North American team that kind of hopped down there for the qualifiers and then headed home. And I mean, even if they were, was what Wind and Rain did really any different? And if so, what made it more different to the point where this was fine, but Pain X doing this wasn't? Like, for me, unless they explicitly lied to Valve, it's tough to defend Valve bumping them from the 2.
One, specifically lied to Valve, and or the whole good faith argument. You know, Valve says, we extended this to you in good faith. You chose not to act in that way, blah, blah, blah. Kind of goes along with the lying. Second of all, test 1, 2, 3 was invited. I don't think Wind and Rain was. Weren't they open qualifiers?
I believe that they were an open qualifier team.
And that's,
let me just confirm
for
on
me, that I'm gonna give the gray area to that. If you want to fly, let's go with NIP for example, or Optic. If you want Optic to fly down before an event and enter through open qualifiers and take that chance and get in through open qualifiers and then compete and go, great. But if you are there expecting to get an invitation, you better be in that region.
I mean,
does that make sense? Because I'm worried.
Not really. I don't think. I think that one, if you're invited, why shouldn't you take that invitation?
Oh no! I'm not saying what I'm saying is that I'm not disagreeing with you. You sure take it, but I'm saying I feel like Valve would not have invited them if they were not believed to be in the region.
Does Valve decide who goes? And
I'm sorry, not Valve. Would have been Starladder and Emba. Yeah. But my point stands. I do not believe that they would have been invited if, again, because Valve supposedly had these conversations with them previously. Okay, but it's a completely different thing to show up to an open event, open qualifier, and run your way through it. Again, it's that's the gray area though.
I don't think it's that gray. I think that if, like, let's say Team Liquid decided to go to South America, would they win the open qualifiers?
Yeah.
They would they would steamroll it, right?
Yeah.
They would steamroll everybody in the everybody invited to the open or the regional qualifiers, right?
Most likely.
Most likely.
Look, I'm just saying somebody could get sick.
They would. I guess maybe like Kuroki might get kidnapped and mind control might get hit by a bus, and then they're playing 3 to 5. Like they're playing a couple guys down, maybe, but otherwise they're gonna body everybody in the South American qualifiers. They're not a South American team by any stretch of the imagination, but they would dominate the open qualifiers. They would dominate the regional qualifiers, and then they would go in. And I don't see it. I don't think making them jump through the extra hoop. That one extra hoop.
That's fair. No, that's fair. I will give you that.
Because they would
it's tough. But again, the fact that Valve said we told them that they needed to do this and they didn't, and then the fact that Zeus Gaming from China just tried to do the same thing in Southeast Asia, only I don't think they actually flew anywhere. They just played from China.
Yeah. They were a Chinese team, by the way. Chinese team playing in the Southeast Asia qualifiers.
And Valve did a similar thing, only instead of kicking them out after the fact, they kicked them out during it and made a quick extra game out of it. Yep. So Valve is clearly saying, okay, fine, we know that we were a deadbeat dad before, but we're here now and we're going to try and do something. And I want to give them credit for that. That's what I think my rambling has been trying to say.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, if they are going to start a larger crackdown on this, you gotta eventually start somewhere. Long story short, and this is a pretty fine place to do it. But I don't think that this actually helps South America in any real way. I get the idea that you gotta not just let anybody show up in South America and destroy all their actual local teams. But I would also say that you need to afford teams the opportunity, one, to import players, and two, the opportunity to freely travel in order to compete in events that aren't necessarily in the Dota Pro circuit. And that's ultimately what seems to be the big issue here, was that they were traveling back and forth to do events like the ESL 1 Hamburg qualifiers and like I think Esports Challenge Showdown or whatever it was, that they were competing in other tournaments outside of the Dota Pro circuit. And that forced them to travel in a way where they never really necessarily even had the opportunity to get settled in Brazil. So I think that's a good place to end here. Do you have any, you can pop back if you want, though.
It's messy. Valve believes that Test 1, 2, 3 did not act in good faith. Got to start somewhere.
Okay.
Next.
Yeah, next. So we're going to wrap up on what has been the hottest button issue, which is Skemberlu, again, former Complexity player, current free agent, kind of, and Kuku, current TNC player, are asterisk are basically rumored to be blackballed by the Chinese government from entering the country. That they will not be able to compete in the Chongqing Major, and that they might not be able to compete in the International 2019, which will take place in Shanghai. So, for those who don't know what happened, at the DreamHack Minor, Skem, still with Complexity Gaming at the time, said a kind of, I wouldn't say a racial epithet, but something that is racially charged during the pregame portion of a game against Royal Never Give Up. He ended up apologizing for it. The team issued a statement literally before the game ended. It was just bam, bam, bam. He apologized, got fined by the team, allegedly, they say. But, yeah, that was that. A few days later, I believe, Kuku from TNC during a pub game, not an official game, said basically the same exact thing and ended up involved in a really bad cover-up where TNC kind of tried to cover up the fact that he said the thing by coming up with a really bad excuse for how it wasn't actually what it seemed like. They proceeded to then retract that crappy cover-up. But by the time that happened, the entire Dota 2 thing was under intense fire from the Chinese esports community. Players, most notably Burning, spoke directly with Valve about it. Players en masse, quote-unquote, review bombed Dota 2, ended up pushing down the user reviews to mostly negative for a time, which takes a lot of doing. It takes a lot of doing, and they did it. There was just a massive amount of backlash, and yeah. It was so intense that, again, Skem and Kuku might not be able to play in the actual Chinese tournaments, which is really bad for their Dota 2 career. Earlier today, we had an official statement by TNC on their Twitter page, which I will read now. They said, quote, after talking to the organizers of the Chongqing Major, which would be Starladder and Imba TV, it was confirmed to us that the following may happen if Kuku will attend the major. 1. He might not be able to enter the country. 2. The city government will possibly cancel the tournament should he attend. And 3. The organizers will not be able to guarantee his safety should he attend. The organizers also informed us that neither TNC nor Kuku is banned from attending the major. In light of this, TNC has yet to decide whether we will continue playing in the event. For now, we will be exploring all our options. We will update the community in the coming days about TNC's decision. Thank you. So, what's your take? Who's to blame? Who's to blame?
Who's to blame? Kuku and TNC. I think that Valve should have made a better statement involving Skem, but beyond that, the Skem situation was handled relatively well. I think that in the Kuku TNC situation, which is really the only situation that matters at this point, Kuku messed up. Supposedly, he's done this before. And more importantly, he's from a region where, like, supposedly, again, I don't live in the Philippines or China, so I don't understand the nuances of this, but apparently this is not uncommon to have some
that there's
some racial stuff thrown back and forth.
There is some manner of animus between the Philippines and China, which I've read exists but have no insight into.
Yeah. And so basically, if I'm TNC and I find out that one of my stars said something stupid, I'm gonna go on a big ass, like,
go on the full apology tour.
You go on that apology train hard, and you get out ahead of it, because you know that the major that you guys are trying to play in is taking place in that country that already doesn't really like you. So, and by you, I mean Filipino visas into China can be, dicey. And again, anybody's visas into the Philippines can be dicey.
As we've seen with the Galaxy Battles Major.
Exactly. And so Valve in this situation, by the time that this blew up to the point where Valve would be aware of it, it had already blown up to the point where Valve couldn't do shit. You know, it's already too late for Valve to try and do we're going to punish him, blah, blah, blah. So all that Valve can do is try and reach out to China, you know, get down on their knees and beg and say, look, this kid messed up. We're going to, you know, punish him. Please don't, you know, shut down our tournament. Please don't, you know, do whatever. We understand that, you know, if the government needs to respond, they do. Something to keep in mind here is that visa issues are not uncommon. Visa issues can range from you didn't fill out the paperwork correctly, you didn't fill out the paperwork in time, to our country doesn't even recognize that your country exists, see 33 going to Malaysia, and we just don't like you, see Kuku right now. Because it's really easy for a government employee to get your visa application and Google your name and go, no, and just hit the deny button. Yeah. And that's almost what I'm hearing like is happening here, is that the Chinese government got brigaded by a shitload of Chinese citizens, and they're going,
don't listen.
Oh, don't wow, they really don't like this.
Yeah. For me, and ultimately, like, who made this decision? It's the Chinese government, more or less. Valve isn't really in a position to do. Okay, somebody who's got no fault in this really is the tournament organizers, Star Ladder and MTV. They can't do anything about this. Their hands are tied. Yeah, their hands are tied. Their checks are already written. The money's out. It's not coming back. They just have to live with what happens. So no fault on their part, in my mind. The Chinese government, obviously to blame for not letting him in the country for somewhat dubious reasons. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that it's okay for him and Skem to have said what they said. They shouldn't have said it. No question. And if you're defending that they said it, you're stupid. But long story short, a lot of this falls on Valve in my mind again. With Riot, when somebody says something bad, and I believe we had a pretty similar issue with a player, Ben 4, was playing games on a Korean server and basically did the same kind of thing. He got punished. He got suspended for a time, I believe. Got fined. He got punished in a defined, clear, transparent way. We knew what he did. We knew what happened. It was done. Done. Over. Moved on. Valve just... When Skem said his thing, Valve was basically like, okay, guys, police this yourself, okay? And they're policing it themselves, and it's already a clusterfuck. You can't have this kind of leadership void from Valve and not expect bad stuff to not happen. Like this, Valve needs to have a structure in place where players are held accountable, and Valve also has an ability to police them. And that's not here. And so somebody's got to police them, and it's the Chinese government now. And that's not ideal. It's not a good way to handle this.
I agree with that. And again, I think something that we kind of glossed over here or missed is that because these two things happened so close to each other, that's part of the problem. Yeah. Because if Valve had said what Skem did was wrong, and there is no place for that with any Dota player, particularly no pro player who represents this community, something like that. And Kuku does what he does. Well, one, Kuku better not do what he does, because like you just got a warning from Valve. In which case, Valve can go, look, dipshit did this. That's not our fault. And like I said, I think this is an issue where even if something like this happened in League of Legends, you know, how do you catch it? You know, this would be like if a player said something in... Actually, a couple of years ago, an American player said something. He was in Korea boot camping.
Yeah, Ben 4.
No, another one.
Oh.
This was a couple years ago.
Yeah, but anyway.
Anyways,
same
guy said
exact
something,
thing.
got in trouble, but it blew up before Riot could get to it. Not as big of a deal, obviously, but still not good. But again, problem is that sometimes Valve can't get ahead of it. Doesn't help that in this situation, whether or not they would have isn't the point.
I'm not going to make the case that Valve, long story short, Valve shouldn't have put themselves in this position in the first place.
I agree with that completely.
They have an approach of hands off when it comes to their pro scenes, generally speaking. They get into the nitty gritty when it's costing them money, but when it comes to actual player transactions and player behavior, they let them do whatever they want, and that's not good. And again, their response on when Skemberlu said his thing was basically to police this yourselves, guys, and it's happening, and it sucks. Like they said, police yourselves. They're getting policed. And the first thing that happens is way over the top. Like, again, Skem and Kuku, you shouldn't be saying that. That is a bad thing to say. You shouldn't be saying it. And it's a bad thing to say. And one more time, you shouldn't be saying it. But goddamn, they're young. And if they're banned from going to TI9, that is career ruining. That is like, that is a punishment well beyond the crime. And again, Valve, you shouldn't have basically told everybody to police themselves. This probably doesn't happen if Valve actually tackles this issue and has a structure in place to punish and regulate the players.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, and this is where I'll kind of shut up, is that this whole issue is just compounding and feeding on itself. And between what the organizers said, because the organizers told TNC, we have no control over what the government does or doesn't do, everybody immediately assumes that means that he is going to not be allowed in the country, get arrested, whatever. It's possible that TNC gets their shit together, reaches out to China and specifically the government of Chongqing, the city, and they're like, you just have to, say I'm sorry when you come in, do a little thing on stage or some shit. And that's it, or hold a little presser and you're fine. And that's it. Or it's possible they're going to say, yeah, no, you don't want to come here. And that's a government thing. And that's what happens when a government official wakes up on the wrong side of bed and your face is on top of that first piece of paper.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said,
price of doing business.
Yeah. And if Valve is really not in a position to tackle this at this point, and they weren't in a position to tackle the Kuku thing in particular, but they're really not in a position to do anything now with TI going to Shanghai. Like, I would bet money that the Shanghai government is being very generous in terms of hotel stuff, in terms of venue costs, in terms of all the important things that go into event planning. I'm sure that Valve is getting a lot of help in that regard, and they're not going to be able to that's going to be too much for them to try and take back on a moral stance over a player who's not really going to translate to anything in terms of ratings or sponsorships. Like, this is going to sound bad, but nobody's really going to notice if Kuku's not at TI9.
Honestly, not. I mean, the only reason people are going to notice that Kuku's not at the Chongqing Major is because they're making a big deal out of it right now.
Yeah.
But speaking of sponsors, the Chongqing Major is sponsored by exactly one organization, and that's the Chongqing Cable Networks. So they don't give a shit about some random Filipino kid.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's really in a position to challenge the Chinese government. And especially if you're Valve, you're really not in a position where you kind of need them right now. So, yeah, it sucks. But Valve, long story short, shouldn't have put themselves in this position. Kuku and Skem shouldn't have put themselves in this position. Chinese government can do whatever they want because they're the government. So it sucks. And we'll ultimately see if this ends up being as bad as it possibly could be. But right now it's looking pretty bad. And again, I put most of the fault at Valve. Yeah. Anything else you want to tackle while we're here?
No, I mean that's really about it. We could go back and forth on where the nuancing lands, but that's just going to turn into 45 minutes of us saying the same thing.
Yeah, probably. We do get rambly sometimes, like, most of the times. So, everybody, we're signing off. If you have any thoughts / questions, post them here right now because I'm doing my sign off. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter. Links are in the description. Hit the like button, especially because it would be great to have our video get better placement in searches. Feel free to follow us. We'll be back in some length of time. We'll probably do a preview. Well, we'll definitely do a preview for the Bucharest Minor. We might be back beforehand before Christmas. We'll see how it goes. Best way to find out would be to follow us on Twitter. Yeah. Everybody have a great week. See ya.